Prosecutors allege that Dawan Ferguson caused the death of his son, Christian Ferguson, after failing to provide him with proper medication for a genetic disorder he had, which prevented him from walking or even talking. The state is expected to call Christian's sibling to the stand this morning, who previously told law enforcement their father came into their bedroom on the night Christian went missing and took him out to the car. We're going to take you live into the courtroom as soon as the judge takes the bench in this case. In the meantime, let's get you caught up on this case with Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter.
It's been almost 20 years since Christian Ferguson, a 9-year-old with special needs, disappeared without a trace. And now his father is facing charges for his death. Christian vanished in 2003 in the central west end of St. Louis. His body has never been found. Dawan Ferguson told police that he was taking Christian to the hospital after he began vomiting most of the night. Ferguson wrapped his son, who was only wearing a diaper, in a blue and red blanket and placed him in the back seat of his 1999 maroon Ford Expedition. He then drove about 2 miles from his home and stopped to use a payphone to call the hospital when someone jumped into his running SUV and left with Christian in the car.
Christian Ferguson has never been recovered. But the evidence that you will see this week will show to you that Christian Ferguson was never missing, and that 911 call placed by the defendant was not true. It was all a cover-up by the defendant to cover up the murder of his own child.
The vehicle was found 15 miles north of St. Louis in Ferguson, but Christian was not inside. A massive search was conducted, but Christian has not been seen since.
I had to turn over custody to the father, and so when he came in, I left out, and that was the last time I saw Christian.
Were you able to say goodbye or give him a kiss?
I was able to, but I just didn't. I didn't feel good about saying goodbye because I thought that was the last time I get a chance to see him.
Police considered Ferguson the prime suspect in his son's death, but did not have enough evidence to arrest him until 2019.
Dawan Ferguson did not kill his son. When Christian got sick, Dawan did what he normally did, which was to take Christian to the hospital. On the way to the hospital, Dawan realized he should have called ahead. He typically called ahead when he would take Christian to the hospital, so the hospital staff could get the room ready for Christian's arrival.
He now stands trial for first-degree murder and child abuse in the disappearance of his son.
Okay, joining us now, we have former prosecutor, trial attorney Vonda Sargent still with us in Seattle. And now here in studio, we have criminal defense attorney Rachel Kaufman joining us. Thank you both for being with us. So we haven't had a chance to hear from you yet this morning, Rachel. We were just discussing kind of the custody issues surrounding this case and the fact that the father had custody of the child. And we've heard some testimony from the mother. What are your initial thoughts there?
My initial thoughts is that if Child and Family Services was involved with custody, which it seems like when a father has custody of the children versus a mother, you would think that Child and Family Services is involved because there's a problem. And the fact that there was a lack of oversight when the child has this disorder that requires extra care, yeah, I mean, it's like they all dropped the ball. But now we're here, all these years later, we still don't know what happened to this child. And this man's life is being, put to the test here. Basically, it all came up because of a separate case and separate allegations from, I believe, his now ex-wife. Mm-hmm. That's concerning to me, too, that somebody like that would be driving the investigation.
And so, coincidentally, just moments ago, we learned that the attorney's having a discussion outside the presence of the jury with the judge, which our cameras are not allowed to show. There was a defense motion filed in limine outside the presence of the jury to ask questions regarding the judge who decided the custody matter. And it sounds like, you believe that was a good call, that there's a lot more to learn on that matter. Vonda, I want to ask you, what could we anticipate in terms of line of questioning here?
I think what we're going to get is for the nice legal term of mudslinging. I think the issue in this case runs a lot deeper, and no one's saying the quiet part out loud. But this whole case rests on the whole systemic abuses and systemic failures. The fact, the evidence that we have thus far is that the mother's problem was finances. Not that she was not taking care of her son, but was money. And that's a real big problem when we start breaking up families like this based on money. And the whole system let this boy down, not just the father, but every person that went into that house and saw him getting thinner, saw that he wasn't eating, they all are at fault here. So there's a systemic problem that's going on here. And I quite frankly don't blame the defense for wanting to get in and start pointing fingers and figuring out who really is at fault here, aside from just his father. So I'm less than a little disgusted. I'm far more disgusted than I can really let loose. And I agree with I agree that they should be in there and asking these difficult questions.
It's interesting because,
big issue.
Yeah, and no, absolutely. And hopefully we will learn more about what ensued during that custody battle, which ultimately led to the father, gaining custody here. But it's interesting. I mean, you were kind of commenting off camera that if there was a loss of custody of the mother, usually that would indicate something more than financial.
I've never in my experience, I've never even heard of any situation where the father gets a child because they make more money. Mm-hmm. Then again, I don't practice family law, so I'm not, sure about that. But either way, the fact that he had such a serious medical condition, you would think that there would be more oversight from the court to make sure the kid was getting what he needed if he was going to only be living with his father.
And so some other interesting detail that I found is that Dawan, the father, had argued that Theda, the mother, had violated his visitation rights. Perhaps that might have been a reason why he got custody, but it sounds like they were each accusing the other of failing to give medications to their son. That said, I mean, Vonda, in this issue, in this particular case, I mean, how does that become an issue? Because we're talking about first-degree murder charges and abuse charges.
At the point where the father has custody of this child, anything that the mother may or may not have done before he had full custody of the child is immaterial. Because if you have full custody of this child because of the mother's malfeasance, then you are viewed as the responsible parent. It turns out not to be that case, but none of that matters at this juncture. You had her, you had the child, she did not, and anything that happened to this child after you had full custody is now on your shoulders. You didn't take him to the hospital for over a year. That was testified to. So anything that she may have done, it's that the buck stops with you in this case. And as far as children not being taken away, at least in my state, children are routinely taken away from a parent because of financial reasons and no other reason. So we have to recognize that there are really two Americas in this country. And one of them is for people that have money, and generally they are white people. And then there's the other America that don't have money, and generally they're people of color. So it happens frequently. So I that surprise that you evidenced, I want to dissuade you of that, because it does happen frequently that children are taken away because of financial reasons, and oftentimes given away to other families entirely. So that happens frequently in this country.
Obviously the purpose of that motion by the defense to kind of have this discussion surrounding the judge in the custody case would be to bring in some of this discussion, right?
We don't know what happened to the child. We don't know what happened. So I know we're saying, okay, well, he went missing, we don't know where he is, and now we have people coming out of the woodwork saying that they remember things not being right, but we still don't know what happened to the child. And so I see from the defense perspective why they're saying, I mean, there were lots of components to the ball dropping. The fact that he is not, but that's really not on trial. I agree, it's immaterial to actually what needs to be proved here by the state. I mean, they're accusing a guy of killing his child, and we don't know where the child is or what happened to them. So we don't know what happened. That's the bottom line to me.
Yeah, that's what is trying to, that's what this jury wants to know, is what happened. And testimony will resume in this case in Missouri of the father accused of murdering his own son who had special needs. And we're going to bring you back live into court when that resumes.